Hey guys, welcome back to a new video. So in this video we will make our service a foreground service. The difference between a background service and a foreground service is that a foreground service must come with a notification. So what foreground actually means here is that the user is actively aware of our service running, because he will see that notification that our service is running. And the big benefit of a foreground service here is that it can't be killed by the Android system, because we could also use a background service here theoretically, and that would also work. But if the Android system needs memory, then it might happen that it kills your service. And there is no way to completely prevent that with a background service. But if we use a foreground service, that service is basically treated like an activity that is in the foreground, and the Android system would also not kill your activity that is currently in the foreground. And in this case, a foreground service is really the best option here to choose, because the user should be actively aware of the service tracking his location. And it would also suck if the user is in the middle of his run and then suddenly the Android system kills his service and all the data is lost. But right now our service is just a normal background service, and to actually make it a foreground service we need to explicitly launch it as one. And of course we also need to create a notification with which we will launch this foreground service. So whenever you want to show a notification, then we need to make sure to create a channel for that, a notification channel, or at least for Android Oreo and later. And for that I will create a function inside of our tracking service class that is called private function create notification channel. And that will take a parameter, which is our notification manager, which is of type notification manager, of course. And in this function, we just want to create our channel. So val channel is equal to notification channel. And here we need to pass an ID for that channel, a name, and an importance. And for that, I want to create constants in our constants file. First of all, a const val for our notification channel ID, which is a string, by the way. And I will set that to tracking channel. Then we will have a const val notification channel name, which I will set to tracking. And we will also have a const val notification ID, so for the ID of an individual notification, and I will set that to 1. And really make sure to set that notification ID at least to 1. I struggled hours and hours to solve a bug when I had that, because I set it to 0, and that doesn't work for notification IDs. You have to set it at least to 1, so make sure to do that, otherwise nothing will work, and I really spent so much time to figure that out. But yeah, you have to set it to 1 at least. But if you've done that, we can go back to our tracking service and pass those parameters to our notification channel. First of all, that is our notification channel ID. Then our notification channel name. And for the importance, let's actually move that in the next lines. And for the importance, we want to pass importance low and import that from notification manager. And it's also very important to choose importance low here and nothing above that, because for every notification we send, and we will send quite a lot of notifications in this app, because each second that passes needs its own notification, because we want to update the time later on. And if we set the importance here to something above importance low, then that means that the notification will always come with a sound. So that would mean that each second, so each time we update our notification, the phone would ring, and we of course don't want that, so make sure to choose importance low here. And as you can see, we get an error here because this notification channel can only be created above Android Oreo or on Android Oreo. So let's press Alt plus Enter here and add this requires API O annotation, and then the error will be gone. And afterwards, we want to use our notification manager we passed as a parameter and call .create notification channel and simply pass our channel that we created here. And then we can go above here and create another function to actually start our foreground service, which will be a private function start foreground service. Doesn't take any parameters. And in here, the first thing we want to do is to actually get a reference to our notification manager so we can call that create notification channel function. So let's write val notification manager and set it to get system service context.notification service and also cast that as a notification manager. So if you don't know what that notification manager is, that is just a system service, so a service of the Android framework that we need whenever we want to show notification. So we just get a reference to that system service and then we create our notification locally here in our app, and then we basically pass that notification to the notification manager so the Android system can actually show our notification. So next we can actually make a check here if we are on Android Oreo or later. So if build.version.stk_int is bigger than or equal to build.versioncodes.o, so Android Oreo, in that case we are on Android Oreo or later, and in that case we want to create our notification channel and simply pass our notification manager here. So next we can actually create our actual notification. Let's call that notification builder and set it to notification compat.builder. And instead of this, we need to pass the context, which is just this, and the channel ID. So the ID of our notification channel. And here we can simply pass our constant again, notification channel ID. And then we can call functions on that builder just as usual with that builder pattern. First of all, we want to set auto cancel to false. That will just prevent that if the user clicks on our notification that the notification disappears. We always want the notification to be active. And that's why we have to set auto cancel to false here. Then we want to set ongoing to true, which means that the notification can't be swiped away. We want to assign a small icon, which I will get from r.drawable.run, icrun. Need to import r here. And then choose ic directions run black, this one. You should already have that if you got the code from my GitHub repository. Then we want to set the content title, so the title of our notification, to running app. And finally the description of our notification, so set content text, so that is just the actual content of our notification, to 00:00:00. So that is just the initial time, obviously, and we will update that notification later on with the new time. So each second we will update it and assign a new value to that content text here. And as a last thing we need to pass to that notification builder is a pending intent. A pending intent is used here to open our main activity when we click on our notification. And in our example, the user expects to open the tracking fragment when he clicks on that notification. But in general, if he would click on that and we would just use a normal pending intent and lead him to our main activity, then the setup or the run fragment would show up, because those are our initial fragments that show up at first. So we need to write some logic that actually leads our user to the tracking fragment. And whenever we create a pending intent, we also need to pass a normal intent to that pending intent. And to that normal intent, we can attach an action that we can check for when our main activity is launched. If that action is attached to that intent the activity was launched with, and if it was, then we can simply navigate with navigation components to our tracking fragment. And I know that sounds really complicated right now, but let's actually start with it. It isn't actually that complicated. Let's just add an action here in our constant files. In our constants file, const_val action show tracking fragment. And also assign the value of that to itself. And now if we go back to our tracking service, I want to create a function here that just returns our pending intent. So private function get main activity pending intent, and set it to pending intent dot get activity. And here we need to pass our context, which is just this, we need to pass a request code, which I will pass 0 here because we don't even need this request code. And here you can see we need to pass a normal intent to that pending intent. So let's create that normal intent here. We also need to pass the context here, which is this. Then this intent must launch our main activity. So we need to pass our main activity, not that one, main activity :class.java, import main activity here, call that also afterwards, and set the action of that intent. So action, it.action, to our action show tracking fragment that we just created in our constants file. And we also need to specify a flag here for that pending intent, which is flag update current, and import that flag. That just means whenever we launch that pending intent and it already exists, it will update it instead of recreating it or restarting it. So what we can do now is we can go into our main activity, and whenever we get a new intent in that main activity, we can check if that action is attached to that intent, and if it is, we simply want to navigate to our tracking fragment. But right now we don't have an option in our nav graph to be able to navigate to our tracking fragment from wherever we are. And to actually accomplish that, what we need to do is to define a global action in our nav graph. So let's go inside of our REST package here and open our nav graph in the navigation package, this one here. And here we want to go inside of our code tab so we can see the actual XML code. And in here we can define a global action, which means we can execute that action from wherever we are. So we will create a new action tag here, give it an ID of action global tracking fragment. Then we need to specify the destination, so app:destination, and just specify to which fragment this action should lead. And that is just our tracking fragment here, so add ID/tracking fragment. And we also want to set launch single job to true. If you don't know what launch single job does is, that will just make sure that we don't launch a new instance of our activity. Because if that would happen, if we would launch a new instance of our activity every time we click on our notification, then of course that new activity doesn't have the data of the old activity. And we don't want that because all of our views and all of our data would be reinitialized. So that's why it is super important that we actually set that launch single job attribute here to true. Anyways, now we can go back into our main activity. Let's open that. And here I want to create a function, a private function, navigate to tracking fragment if needed. And we will pass an intent to that function. Actually, that will be a nullable intent here. And inside of this function, we can check if intent.action, so if the attached action of that intent is equal to action show tracking fragment, import that action. So if that action is attached, we know that this activity was launched by a notification click. And in that case, we want to navigate to our tracking fragment. So we use nav host fragment.findNavController.navigate. And here we need to pass the ID of our action we want to navigate to, or the action we want to execute. So r.id.tracking fragment, and we choose that global action tracking fragment here. So now it could be that our main activity was destroyed, but our service is still running. And if we then send that pending intent, that would mean that our main activity will be relaunched. And in that case, it will go inside of onCreate again. So what we need to do is we need to execute navigate to tracking fragment if needed inside of our onCreate function and pass the intent the activity was started with. But if the activity wasn't destroyed and we use that pending intent to launch it, then it won't go inside of onCreate again. Instead, it will call onNewIntent instead. So we also need to execute that function inside of this onNewIntent function and pass the intent that is passed to this function. So in both scenarios, we need to check if that action is actually attached to that intent. But that's actually it for our main activity. Now we can go back into our tracking service. And you can see we now have that function that returns our pending intent, and we can use that to add that pending intent to our notification builder. So set content intent and just use get main activity pending intent here. And then we can finally launch our foreground service by writing start foreground. This function, don't call start foreground service. That will be a recursive loop here because that function is called like that. So just use start foreground here. We want to pass our notification ID, not the channel ID. We want to use the notification ID. And as a second parameter, we need to pass our actual notification, which we created before. So we use notification builder.build. So that will just tell this service that it is a foreground service, or it will start it as a foreground service with that notification that we created here before. And now the only last thing we need to do here is to actually call this function inside of our service class when we retrieve that action start or resume service. And since this action should start our service if it was sent for the first time and resume it if it was already running, so if it is in the pause state, we also need a boolean here that tells us if this is actually the first run. So var is first run, and we set it to true, of course, because initially that is the first run. And inside of our action start or resume service here, we want to check if is first run. So if we start the service, then we simply want to use start foreground service and set is first run to false. And in the else block, right now we don't have anything. We can just use a log here, timber.d resuming service. And then we can also remove that log. I know that was a lot of new stuff in this video. I just want to make a quick little recap because of that. So we created our start foreground service function here that makes use of our notification manager to create a notification channel for devices above Android Oreo and Android Oreo itself. And then we used that notification builder to construct our actual notification. Because we have a foreground service here, we also need to launch that service with a notification. Whenever you have a foreground service, you must do that. And for that notification builder, we needed to create a pending intent that leads us to our main activity. When we click on that intent, we created that intent in this function here. And because by default, our tracking fragment won't show up if we launch our main activity, we needed to take some extra steps. So we attached that action show tracking fragment to that intent that we put inside of this pending intent object. So whenever our main activity is launched with a new intent, either in onCreate or in onNewIntent, we check if we need to navigate to the tracking fragment. So that means if that main activity was launched by a click on our notification, and in that case, we simply use our navigation components library to navigate to our tracking fragment. So let's actually run our app and try out if everything is working. Take a look in our emulator here. Navigate to the tracking fragment. And yes, I allow the permissions here. I uninstalled the app recently. Go inside of the tracking fragment and click on start. And now you can see our service was launched because the notification shows up. And if we now minimize our app, then the notification is still there, of course. And if we click on it, our tracking fragment will open. But also if we navigate back to the setup fragment, for example, and minimize the app and click on the notification, then we will still be led to our tracking fragment. And also if we completely close our app and click on the notification, then we will also be led to the tracking fragment. So that would be the case in which that navigate to tracking fragment, if needed, function is executed because our app was destroyed, our main activity was destroyed, so it will start in onCreate again. But if we just minimize the app and click on running app again on that notification, then onCreate won't be called again. Instead, it will call this onNewIntent function. So yeah, I hope this was understandable for you and you learned something new. If so, please let me know in the comments below. And also if you have any questions, don't mind asking them below and I will try my best to answer them. If you haven't already, please subscribe to my channel so you don't miss any new videos. Have a good day. See you in the next video. Bye bye.